There is no single face behind the word ninja. No founder, no manifesto, no traceable moment of origin. The term itself, or more precisely in historical documents, shinobi, referred not to one person but to a function. It described those who moved through war not as soldiers in formation, but as something else entirely. They gathered intelligence. They slipped into enemy territory. They disrupted, observed, and vanished. To understand what ninja actually were, we have to set aside nearly everything popular culture has built around them. The black-clad figure scaling castle walls at midnight is largely a creation of 20th century entertainment. What historical records show is considerably more complex, and in many ways, more interesting. The regions most associated with ninja are Iga, in what is now Mie Prefecture, and Koga, in what is now Shiga Prefecture. Both are mountainous, inland territories. Both were, by the standards of medieval Japan, politically fragmented. This matters. In Iga especially, there was no single dominant lord. Power was distributed among Ji samurai, provincial warriors who were closer to landholding farmers than to the aristocratic samurai of popular imagination. These were people accustomed to self-governance, managing local affairs without a central authority imposing order from above. When outside powers came calling, they could offer their skills collectively, as hired specialists. This is the structural origin of what we call the ninja. Not a secret society with mystical initiation rites. A community of trained operatives, grounded in specific geography, who found a market for their abilities during a period when those abilities were in extremely high demand. The Sengoku period, Japan's era of warring states, spanning roughly the 15th through the late 16th century, was defined by constant military conflict between regional lords. In that environment, information was a weapon. Knowing where an enemy was moving, how many soldiers he had, what his supply lines looked like, these things could determine the outcome of a campaign before a single blade was drawn. Shinobi filled that need. They were deployed for reconnaissance, for infiltrating enemy fortifications, for disrupting communications, and for creating confusion in advance of a larger assault. Historical records from various domain archives confirm their employment in these roles. The specifics are often sparse, and that is itself revealing. These were operations designed not to be documented. The terminology used in those records varied. Shinobi was common. So were rappa and suppa, terms appearing in military documents across different domains, suggesting the practice was widespread rather than confined to a single region. One of the clearest historical cases involves Oda Nobunaga and his campaigns against Iga. Nobunaga was among the most powerful warlords of the 16th century, a figure who systematically dismantled the fragmented power structures of his era. His forces moved against Iga in what is recorded as the Tensho Iga War. The Iga Confederacy resisted. They used their knowledge of the terrain, their networks, and their methods of asymmetric engagement. They were ultimately defeated. Nobunaga's military superiority in conventional terms was too great to overcome. But the resistance itself is significant. The Iga forces were not simply soldiers defending a territory. They were a community protecting a way of operating that depended on independence. When that independence was destroyed, many dispersed, and some would later appear in other historical accounts, working for other lords. The second major documented episode involves Tokugawa Ieyasu and what is known as the Iga Crossing. Following the assassination of Oda Nobunaga, Ieyasu found himself dangerously exposed, far from his home territory. He needed to return quickly and safely. Local Iga operatives, shinobi who had dispersed after Nobunaga's campaign, served as guides and escorts through the difficult mountain passage. Ieyasu survived. He returned to his domain, consolidated his position, and eventually founded the Tokugawa shogunate, the government that would rule Japan for more than 2.5 centuries. The role of the Iga escorts in his survival is documented, though precise operational details remain partial. Under the Tokugawa shogunate, Iga operatives were formally integrated into the governmental structure. They were designated as Igamano and assigned roles in the security apparatus of Edo Castle. Koga operatives received similar treatment as Kogamano. Their function shifted. The era of open warfare between competing lords was ending. What the shogunate needed was not battlefield disruption but internal surveillance, communication, and the maintenance of order. This transition reveals something important. Shinobi were not defined by a fixed ideology or a single type of mission. They were defined by a set of capacities, movement, information, concealment, adaptability, that different historical periods required in different forms. The training systems associated with shinobi are described in several historical texts. The most cited is the Bansenshuki, a document compiled in the mid-17th century by an Iga operative named Fujibayashi Yasutake. The text covers infiltration, information gathering, disguise, and psychological methods. Other documents, including domain records and military manuals, confirm specific deployments without providing the granular detail that later popular accounts would invent. This gap, between what we know happened and what we do not know about how it happened, is a persistent feature of shinobi history. It is also, in a sense, appropriate. The whole point of these operations was to avoid leaving a clear trace. That the historical record is incomplete may reflect how effectively these operatives did their work. By the Meiji period, the formal roles of Igamano and Kogamano had long dissolved. What remained was memory, and memory began to transform. The figure of the ninja became a subject of popular fiction. Stage performances, illustrated books, and eventually films built an image that was part folklore, part fantasy. The black outfit became fixed. The throwing star became iconic. The idea of near supernatural ability became standard. None of this appeared in historical documents. What historical documents show are human beings with specific training, operating within specific political conditions, doing dangerous work that their employers needed done. The historical record also includes accounts of shinobi captured during missions, questioned and held as any other prisoner would be. That outcome does not match the mythology, but it matches the sources. What persists, across the centuries and through the mythology, is a question the sources themselves seem to invite. These were people who built a livelihood on making themselves invisible to the forces around them. Their actual lives, their methods, their sense of what they were doing, most of it did not survive in any form we can directly read. What survived is effect. The decisions influenced by intelligence they provided. The movements that succeeded or failed because of what they reported. The person who left no record, by design, still shaped events that the record preserved. Whether that constitutes power, or merely function, or something that requires a different word entirely, that remains an open question. Thank you for watching Legends Great Figures. Please subscribe to our channel and give us a like.